This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benneroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world, and all you broadband fans out there. Now, download White Plains Week instantly, right now. Words of might delivered with the speed of light. John Bailey with Peter Katz, the anchor for all seasons, and Jim Benneroff is on assignment tonight. And right away, we would like to go to the White Plains Week Willow Newsreel March of Time, and it was a dreary week last night. 5 to 6 days without seeing the sun, and the leaves had started to turn up county. But on Monday, an old friend came out.
The sun came out.
It was so nice.
And it was so nice and bright that it managed to cause the headlines to sprout.
Yes, it did.
And so now the headlines are fully developed.
Yes.
And they have been watered, and John can read them.
That's right. The sun comes out in White Plains, and we may dodge Hurricane Matthew. Westchester County Association announces $750 million for city effort to broadband White Plains, New Rochelle, Mount Vernon, and Yonkers. We'll have a Trump Today and Hillary and Friends update from Peter Katz on the election of the absurd. City schedules November 7th hearing on tax break to encourage preservation of exterior of designated historic sites in White Plains. The transit meeting video appears on the City Transit District website. You can see it right there. County airport hours shift and new construction contemplated. I think it's even started. Destroyed boardwalk from the last hurricane, targeted for repair by the county. They've sent out requests for proposals. The Westchester Medical Center, accused of padding Medicaid billing for disabled wards of the state, vigorously denies the suit. And we'll have video of the 29 newest members of the White Plains City workforce. And right now, let's go to our main story, and that was the Westchester County Association News Conference yesterday on a brand new initiative. You're going to hear from the following folks. First up will be Bill Harrington, the chairman of the WCA, then Bill Mooney, the CEO, and Mayor Tom Roach of White Plains, and Mayor Richard Thomas of Mount Vernon talking about this initiative. Here we go.
Now, we're here to talk about a next bleak thing. 140 years ago, Commodore Vanderbilt had a vision, and he bought what is now known as the Metro-North Railroad. It was a transformative event for this county and the region. 61 years ago, we opened the Tappan Zee Bridge in the I-287 corridor, which was similarly a transformative event for this county. Today, we're here to announce a generationally transformative event that could change this county for the next 50 years and beyond.
We are announcing today that the Westchester County Association is launching a public-private partnership to spearhead smart growth initiatives in Westchester County and to bring gigabit broadband talent and innovation to Westchester's 4 largest cities. That's a wow. That's a wow. The cities Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, White Plains, and Yonkers have agreed to sign a Smart City Compact. And as a first step, work with the WCA to bring the city's gigabit broadband to every household, every business, healthcare, and educational organization in the next 3 to 5 years. By the way, this may be the first such compact between cities in the nation. Under the terms of the pact, the cities will seek joint funding, share best practices, develop joint federal and state legislative agendas, and collaborate on creating innovation districts, among other things. Gigabit broadband is just the first step. We need the right digital infrastructure with the capacity and speed to make us competitive in the new economy. First of all, it will make us globally competitive. It will close the digital divide. That has huge social implications when I talk about the digital divide. Spark the innovation economy. Create municipal efficiencies. Facilitate telemedicine and population health. Modernize public safety and improve communications for first responders. Create access for education. Facilitate online remote learning and enhance STEM learning in our public schools. Lead to the creation of innovation districts for entrepreneurs. Enable businesses to be more productive. They will be able to, as an example, download large files and videos in seconds rather than hours. Connect easily and rapidly with global partners and clients. And finally, which is a huge issue in my mind, we believe that this effort will create and expand new and existing businesses, bringing what? Much needed revenues to our community. The WCA is now in the process of putting together a steering committee for smart growth, comprised of the key members of our Westchester cities, key business sectors, and community leaders who will help to determine the sources of funding and the county's needs and opportunities. A project director will be named very shortly. That individual will work on a day-to-day basis with the project teams coming from each one of the cities, evaluate various broadband models, current capacity, and potential advisors. The key is what? The key to involve everybody. This is a community issue. This is not a WCA issue. This is a community issue. All of us coming together, collaborating together for a common vision to make our community much better. We will keep the public apprised and issue regular progress reports. So to sum it up, gigabit broadband will be a game changer.
But the peg that we can add now, when we get through all of this, is the big broadband. That big pipe that is going to make all the difference in the world, that's going to be needed. And probably a lot of people are going to wake up to the need for it when the horse is like halfway around. I think Commodore Vanderbilt is involved in horse racing too. When the horse is about, he's been mentioned more this morning than probably in the last 50 years. But the horse is already 3/4 of the way around the track, and they're going to be trying to catch up. So I think this is a real bear to take on, and there's a lot to it. But the benefit of being able to be proactive in this area, develop what we want to do, work together to offer a bigger package, which will make us more attractive. You know, so much of what we do as mayors is like you get a phone call. Somebody comes in and says, we have a proposal for you. It sounds great. Wow, you're going to bring broadband to my city. Is it the best deal? You know, with all the other things we have going on, can we analyze it as well as we would like to? So this is an opportunity for us to do that together, get the best package for our communities and our region, and really make it, and it can be a real game changer. So I want to thank WCA for all their work on this, and as I said to Bill, he's in better shape than the Tappan Zee Bridge, so and we want to keep him, we're not replacing him, so thank you.
This moment represents once upon a time when America fell asleep, when we fell asleep and the Russians beat us to space. And you step back and look at that historical challenge that was ushered in on us about what will we do to get to the moon, what will we do to get even further. And this challenge right now to build broadband in Westchester County is the equivalent of that generational challenge. It's not only going to close the digital divide for communities like Mount Vernon, but it's going to give access, unprecedented access and speed to small businesses, young entrepreneurs, dreamers that want to achieve. And this is exactly what we should be doing. When you look around and see what's happening in Chattanooga, Huntsville, around the country in the Midwest, They are making the investments, and they're making it very easy to happen. So for the four cities to come together not only makes sense, it's what we must do to make sure that Westchester, our four cities, particularly Mount Vernon, 3 train stations, 6 highways. Just want to put that little plug in there. And make sure that we leapfrog the rest of the country.
So there you have it. That's the gist. And I talked, I asked a couple of questions after the news conference, Peter, and it was pegged at $750 million for the four cities.
$750 million to
That's
do
right.
this.
They don't like saying that billion word. The billion word is being used a lot these days in projects. Now,
Look, it's a lot of money. What this is, when they talk about gigabit speed or super speed, you're talking approximately 10 times faster than the typical high-speed internet we're using today. The question arises, who should be doing this? Should this be a government project? Should this be a private project? Should
Peter,
it be
you're
a
right.
combination?
Never struck me.
And this is where, if you look at the national scene today, Republicans typically say government is too big and shouldn't be doing so much.
Yes.
A strict constructionist on the Republican side would say this should be up to Verizon to do. This should be up to Optimum Cable Service to do. The government shouldn't be involved in this in any way, shape, or form.
I interviewed Robert Weiss, who owns the building, and there's a shot of him. And afterwards, I asked, well, how is your building equipped now? And he says he gets services from Verizon, which put in the service free and then charge the various tenants of the building for the service. Now, that is a big issue. You can install this broadband, but if the provider you pick provides it, at their cost, what will it cost the consumers and the businesses? That's an issue.
In theory now, if you're going to have equal access for everyone, for every resident in Westchester County, then that means that someone has got to pay the cost of bringing this to everyone, and has to pay the monthly maintenance charge for this, has to pay any usage charges that may be involved. So the question, which really was not laid out in words of one syllable yesterday, is who pays? Does government pay, and does that mean, do taxpayers have to dip into their wallets to do this?
Or do we get it free from a provider who likes our four-city package?
Or do you replicate the model which they've done now on electricity service, which is everyone gets together, then tries to negotiate something with private industry to get a reasonable financial deal?
And we wind up paying more to establish wind, solar, whatever.
To use a cliche, the devil is in the details. Now, this is part of the package that they call smart growth. And smart growth to cities means transit-oriented development. It means shifting to bicycles and away from automobiles when possible. It means being sure that you do mixed-use development where appropriate. It means that you plan using this word sustainability, so that everything blends with nature and will regenerate itself and doesn't cost a lot in the way of natural resources and is not a burden on the earth. And then they also seek to have community collaboration so that everyone is involved and support comes from the bottom up. So really, if you build enough support, then no one, no matter how
can possibly
radical, can object and kill what you're trying to do.
Just a couple,
this is not something that's going to happen overnight.
4 to 5 years,
we're talking years out.
A pipe dream.
It could very well be. We just don't have the basic cabling or fiber in the ground
Mayor
to
Roach
do
says
this.
we do here in White Plains, and
in White Plains we have local fiber service available. But even on fiber, your speed is limited. Each fiber strand has a limited bandwidth, a limited capability. What you're talking about here is a regional approach to this.
Right. City by the first 4 cities, and then we'll see what happens later. And
We'll hear
is
more
what-
about this, and I'm sure we'll hear more details
right.
about this in the
Right.
future. Conceptually, you know, this is
very much like sustainable Westchester.
It's really high-level conceptual
Yes.
thinking
Yes.
that we have seen from those involved in this up to this point. The
It
problem
sounds
is
very
when
good.
you take high-level conceptual thinking and then try to make it a practical reality.
Boy, there are a lot of people that do that. All right. Anyway,
The city is trying to do that now. It's been trying to get people to convert buildings into something more sustainable, something
that's
which
right.
is...
And that's the shocker of the week, which is coming up. This appeared on the agenda last Monday night. A local law, establishment of a hearing on November 7th to give a tax break to organizations.
or individuals or businesses
Yes, that's right, homes too.
that preserve historic buildings. Now, if you have a building which has, let's say, some unique, important architecture to it, and you have that declared a historic site, there is a commission now in the city that does that sort of thing.
Like I have a home, Peter,
Yeah.
that is the original home
Well,
of the
you're-
first White
you're-
Plains News website.
Okay.
That's got to be
all right. Well,
historic.
all right. Let's
Plus
say,
my office.
let's say that John's site
Yes.
was declared a historic site for White Plains,
And it is, folks, it really is.
or maybe it would be a historical site rather than a
It's
historical
originally
site.
built farmhouse back in the 1940s.
Okay, so let's say that you have this declared as a historic landmark, all right?
Right.
If you have to do work to preserve the historic features, the exterior, for example, so that it looks the way it looked in the 1940s or the 1920s or the 1890s or something like that, the city agrees not to reassess your property for the added value of the preservation.
Yeah, this is the exterior
Right.
portion of the house, Lloyd Tash. the assessor said.
So it's not going to cost you more to preserve a historic site from a tax standpoint, at least in the short term.
Yeah,
Now,
5 years of
5
abatement,
years of no additional
and then
charge. If
for the next 5, it
over the
times.
next 5, there may be some incremental increases in the real estate taxes that you pay for the improvements that you have done to your property, and then after that, all bets are off.
Get those applications in, folks.
There will be a public hearing on this. It's an ordinance which
In
they
November.
offered. When you put in a new ordinance, it has to have 2 readings. So this was the first reading. They offered it. Then there will be a public hearing. Then they will vote on this ordinance.
Now it's time for everybody's favorite election feature nationally and around the world, the Trump-Hillary outlook. Hillary and friends and Trump today. Peter, it was another absurd week.
Oh, it was indeed. Indeed, in this presidential campaign, I don't think the country has seen anything like this in its history.
They're great entertainment for Europe.
I misspoke slightly. What we were talking about before is a local law.
Local law.
Yeah. Okay. What happened this week in the presidential campaign? The Atlantic, which many people know as the Atlantic Monthly, has endorsed Hillary Clinton. Why is that more significant than other endorsements? Well, this is only the 3rd time the magazine has endorsed a presidential candidate since it was founded in 1857. The first candidate for office endorsed by the Atlantic was Abraham Lincoln in 1860. The second candidate was Lyndon Johnson in 1964. Now, the 3rd time that they have seen fit to endorse a presidential candidate is now, and it is Hillary Clinton. Bill Clinton continues to try to undo his criticism of Obamacare, which he did during a speech. It was in Flint, Michigan, and it was this past Monday, and he said, Obamacare is not working well. He says, while it's good for people on Medicaid, small business owners and middle-class workers were getting killed by it. He now has been trying to backpedal on those comments. At a Trump rally in Henderson, Nevada, an aide to Trump asked the pool TV cameraman, the networks get together and they just have one feed, which they then all share, of the event that they're covering. Keeps costs down, makes it more efficient. Anyway, the cameraman was asked by the Trump campaign to keep his shot tight on Trump and to keep the teleprompters out of the picture so the audience can't tell that he's using teleprompters. Trump has heavily criticized politicians, especially President Obama, who do use teleprompters. But we know that Trump needs to read from a teleprompter in order to stay on message and in order to make sure that his sentences are coherent when he's delivering complex policy speeches.
Has he said anything complex?
Yes, actually he has, or he has read it off teleprompters. It turns out that the Trump Foundation donated generously to several conservative nonprofits that Trump needed to help bolster his efforts to obtain the Republican presidential nomination. The Trump Foundation gave more than $321,000 to prominent conservative groups, including Iowa's Family Leader, the South Carolina Palmetto Family Council, the American Conservatives Union, and Citizens United. Remember that Supreme Court case about Citizens United?
Yes.
New York Attorney General Schneiderman has sent a cease and desist letter to the Trump Foundation saying it never properly registered with New York State Charities Bureau to obtain legal certification to solicit donations in New York State.
Do they have to give it back?
What, give back the money?
That's a good question.
That all depends. They might. A group of 30 former Republican members of Congress has come out against Donald Trump. It's the largest group of former Republican elected officials to officially announce their opposition to Trump. In the vice presidential debate, which was this week, Republican Pence played the role of a cool, calm pro, while Democrat Kaine kept interrupting, trying to correct what Pence was saying. The media fact-checkers had a field day, and they did demonstrate that Pence kept lying when he, on television, in the debate, denied that Trump said a lot of the more outrageous things that Trump did say, such as Russia's Putin was a stronger leader than President Obama. Muslims should be banned from the U.S. Trump wanted a deportation force that would go door to door to find and kick out illegal immigrants, and women who have abortions should be punished. And what we saw on television, on the cable news networks in any event, was Pence making the denial when challenged by Kaine, and then clips of Trump saying the things that Pence said he didn't say. Reaction continued to the New York Times publishing some pages of Donald Trump's 1995 income tax returns. These are the pages, folks, which showed he had a $916 million loss that year. And when carried forward was used, that's a device that you can use when you depreciate things or you have big losses. When he carried forward the $916 million loss, he would be able to avoid paying taxes for 18 years, according to the Times. Trump's accountant, who prepared this return, was interviewed on MSNBC this week. Although he was careful not to disclose confidential information about Trump's finances, the accountant did say that Trump should release his tax returns. And he said nothing about being under an IRS audit prevents anyone from releasing their tax returns. That's been Trump's excuse for not releasing them. He's under audit, but he also has refused to produce the IRS letter, which says you're going to be audited, and that's a letter which anyone who's going to be audited receives. Sunday, October 9th, 9 p.m., the second presidential debate takes place. Rudolph Giuliani's daughter, Rudolph Giuliani is a close aide to Trump. She, this morning, endorsed Hillary Clinton for president. Newsweek says Trump used Chinese steel in his buildings instead of using U.S. steel. And of course, as we know, Trump has been visiting the steel areas in Pennsylvania, Ohio, the Midwest, telling workers gee, we should be building the U.S. steel industry, not buying steel from China.
Well, do as I say, not as I do.
Something like that.
Something like that.
And Trump has told a rally that if your doctor tells you that you just have a few days to live, you should hang on so you can vote in the election.
But they should get them absentee ballots. But we'd like to welcome some new workers to White Plains, and they're on the job.
Well, you know, John, the city has 29 new workers to handle a job which you'd expect to be handled by the Parks Department or the Department of Public Works staff. And we've learned that these workers are not being given weekends off, not being paid overtime for more than 40 hours work a week.
Sounds like a good work model.
They don't even get an hour off for lunch, and they don't have union representation.
Hall Avenue and Valley Road is where the new workers are assigned. They're at Baldwin Farm. Oh, did I mention that they're goats? Yes, goats. Instead of assigning members of the DPW staff to clear the overgrown former farm so low-intensity agriculture could be brought back, the city hired a herd of 29 goats. The goats are kept inside a 4-acre fenced area where they eat invasive plants, including vines and poison ivy. Goats have been used for land clearing and maintenance by the New York Port Authority, National Park Service, private cemeteries, and colleges, and it's been found that using goats costs about half of what it would cost to clear land using conventional machinery and human workers. There was an incident a few weeks ago when the goats got out and had to be rounded up along Hall Avenue, but the city says it's taken precautions so that won't happen again. There are community gardens at Baldwin Farm, and like all city parks, it's open to the public during daylight hours. The city invites residents and children accompanied by adults to visit the goats, but warns you could get poison ivy from touching them because they carry oils from the poison ivy. The goats will be at Baldwin Farm until the cold weather sets in November, and then they spend the winter at home in Rhinebeck, New York, and are scheduled to return to White Plains next spring.
Well, I mean, this perhaps is a new trend.
You know, I think that's
I think we should have called the unions about this.
I told John before we started recording this program that that's probably the only story anyone will remember from this show.
Well, it certainly provides anyone who runs against the Roach administration a real rallying cry, unfair to workers, right? I mean, it's wonderful.
You know, just quickly, John, something about
they just give us such great material.
The airport. There's been a bit of a tussle going on at the airport. The airport has an advisory commission, and there's been some opposition voiced to a plan that the county has to redo the way they figure the number of passengers allowed to come through the terminal so that airlines would have more freedom to schedule flights as they need to schedule flights rather than being restricted. They want to count on the basis of passengers per day rather than passengers per half hour.
Right, and that's about all the time we have for our half hour.
I think we can go catch a plane right now.
John Bailey, Peter Katz, and for Jim Benneroff, good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.